Welcome back to Dave's Garage. This is episode 4, the thighs. Now my whole plan with the armour kit was to start with the easiest piece and work my way up to the hardest piece, which for me was going to be the helmet. So first I did the sleeve, and then I did the bicep, I did the shin piece, and then I went to do the thighs, and my whole plan came to a grinding halt. I put the two thigh pieces together for a test fit and realised that they were huge and I didn't know what was going on. So I went to the instructions, and it said in the instructions that these were the new thighs. They had been recently updated and extra had been added so you can get a custom fit. From that I gathered the old thighs were too small for most people. So I went online, as I have done with all of this project, and seek the advice of people who have done this a lot longer than I have. All the excellent TK websites out there, all the forums and discussion boards about Star Wars and props. And I found people also asking the same questions. Hey, my thigh piece is so big, I don't know what to do with them. Now some of the answers were, just put them together and wear them a few times and then you'll finally realise how much you need to cut off. Well, for me that wasn't really an option. They were so big it just didn't seem possible for me to do that. And then I saw some other replies where it said, put the thighs on, try and get a good fit, but not too tight, leave as much as you can. That was the way I decided to go. I put them on, I made the measurements, it was actually an inch that I needed to cut off. And I left a lot of room in there. I left a lot of room in there for a couple of reasons. One thing, as I noticed as I put this uniform on, and as you create it, you wear more pieces. You know, I put on the sleeves and they felt fine. Then when I added the biceps, it felt a little different. You put in shoulder pieces and the torso and the chest, and as you put more and more pieces on, you find the confinement is even larger. Your movement is restricted. So I decided that I was going to skip episode 4, the thighs, and go on to the main torso, which was also recommended in the websites that I looked at. Was put on your shins, put on your main torso, then put the thigh on and try and get a good measurement from that. That also was a good idea. So what I did was I went and did the main torso, then I did the chest pieces, I had my shins on, and then I put the thigh piece on there just to see how much I needed to leave in there. And I realised I actually needed to leave quite a lot in there, more than I would have thought. With all of these pieces, the sleeve and the bicep and the shin, I haven't had to trim anything. So this was the first piece I've actually had to trim for sizing and comfort, rather than, you know, just the aesthetics of the piece. Another thing that I've also noticed with these new updated thighs is that the material seems to be a little thinner. Now the ABS in the rest of the kit is supposed to be 0.9, but this actually seems like 0.6 or maybe 0.7. I don't have a micrometer with me, but it's definitely thinner and lighter. This worried me a little bit, cutting pieces off, if it was going to affect the strength. It may be a blessing in disguise, it may be a good thing, it may be a bad thing. I guess that only the future will tell. Then I also noticed this is actually the finished thigh. It came out really nice. Was the back piece is very important. Now on the back piece you can see there's this little kind of arch here. Now that arch is really important for your movement of your leg. That is where the back of your knee hits, depending of course on your height, but for me that's where the back of my knee hits. The larger the area is, the more comfortable it is to move in it. When that area gets small, it becomes very uncomfortable, and what you may have to do if you've got thinner thighs is actually trim that archway back into the kit for your movement to make it more comfortable. Another thing I noticed with the thighs is that there's a pretty big overlap right here at the bottom where the decorative piece is. And I don't know if this was in the original kit or in the original uniform, but as the decorative moulding comes up, it goes flat right at the seam. Now on this side, the decorative piece comes up, but it never goes flat. So when you put them together, there's enough room to put my finger. Now I haven't trimmed it out yet, and I'm actually going to wear it a couple of times and see how much it really bothers me. But what I may have to do is just trim a small piece of that off so the flat piece can connect to another flat piece. I'm not quite sure if I'm going to do that yet or not. Like I said, I'm going to wear it a few times. Another thing I noticed when I came to do this, and we put this together much as the same as we did the sleeves and the shins, taping, the sandpaper and gluing. When I came to put my trusty clamps on, the clamps were pressing on the moulding in such a way that actually pushing the moulding apart. So I found I couldn't use the clamps. Instead I'm using a little bit of extra tape when I've added the glue, just to fold it under, and then even with the larger clamps it doesn't come anywhere near the middle, so you have to press it down anyway. So I've got rid of the clamps on this piece, and unfortunately I don't have Will to help me, so probably much like many of you out there, I'm going to be doing this on my own with no clamps. I'm just going to use some tape to hold it in place, and then for the 4 or 5 minutes that this glue takes to set, I'm just going to be pushing it down to make sure it has a nice smooth finish and connection. And it actually worked out very well when I first did it. And I'm not sure how well it will work for the people who are using the ABS glue, because you need a longer amount of time. Perhaps you have a different kit so it has a different moulding on the front, or perhaps you have some different clamps than I have. So I'm sure you'll find a way around it. So you may have heard me say in previous episodes that with a larger piece I was going to use a hobby knife to cut, but because it is a little thinner, and that the piece is flat, I'm actually going to use my scissors to do the trimming again. Now I know how much I'm going to cut off the back piece. It's actually 1 inch, and originally I was going to use a crayon and just draw the inch on there, but then I realised my tape's 1 inch, and what straighter line could I get than a piece of tape? So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to tape off the piece that I'm going to cut, and I'm just going to cut along that line with the scissors. Now these scissors that I'm using, they're not any special scissors. They are sharp, and the fitting is very tight in them, so there's no movement. I don't recommend you use a pair of old blunt scissors to do any cutting, especially on this piece. So there you have it. I've got my tape on there, and I am literally going to cut along that line with my scissors. Now I'm just using constant, even pressure. I'm not cutting all the way to the end of the scissors. I'm cutting a little piece and then moving it up. Now if you want to, you can just trim that piece off to make it easier for yourself as you're cutting the rest.